Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. Going to talk about the Longhorns getting healthy just in time to take on Georgia. This edition of On Texas Football is brought to you by our friends over at Hargrove Roofing. I just want to say thank you to our friends at Hargrove Roofing with offices across Texas, including in Austin, as well as Louisiana and Arkansas. Hargrove Roofing will take care of all of your roofing needs. Plus, they're Longhorn friendly with partners like former defensive tackle Stevie Lee. They are the most pro burnt orange roofing company out there. No one wants to turn their home over to a company they can't trust. So call Hargrove today for a free, no strings attached roof inspection. Just call 512-645-3202. Again, that's 512-645-3202. Hargrove Roofing. Know who's on your roof. And CJ, Sark knows who's going to be back in the lineup, at least early in the week. It looks that way. We'll start on offense. We'll get to this cut from the press conference. Sark talking about Ryan Wingo. He was asked about Wingo's new role, and you'll hear Sark get into it. This isn't a new role that Ryan Wingo's taken on the last few games. This is what they've always envisioned he would be.
I think this is what we always envisioned it would be. So I don't think it's necessarily new. I think it's just taking some time, and that's okay. Things take time. And what I'm happy about is that we're evolving and getting better as the season's moving on, and that's a credit to those players of working at their craft and trying to improve and trying to get better at whether it's understanding timing or making plays on the ball or trusting his speed in Wingo's case to really be electric with the ball in his hands. And so that's just the growth that I think a young offensive football team's had to go through some of those growing pains. But we're kind of getting on the other side of it. Now we need to continue to play better than that. And that's the key for us, is that we can't rest. Now we got to keep pushing and striving for more.
So, CJ, I know we got a taste of it in the Vanderbilt game, obviously with the opening play and then the play he gets hurt on. I'm just as excited, though. You go back to the Mississippi State game, and yes, the first play where he almost breaks it for a touchdown and Texas ends up scoring on that drive, but there was a couple of deep shots late in that game where Arch found him. So it's been a slow burn, but we're starting to see Ryan Wingo now turn the corner, I think, a little bit into being that kind of well-rounded number one type receiver I think we all envisioned he would be at some point.
Yeah, definitely. 272 yards receiving over the last two games, and that's only with, 2 snaps against Vanderbilt. He's able to put up some big-time numbers there, and, it's encouraging that Texas is starting to catch its stride now, and all the while you kind of sit back and you wonder, if this is what you always envisioned for Ryan Wingo, why did it take until week 9 and 10 to get to this point? But, hey, they've gotten there. Right. And now moving forward with a healthy Ryan Wingo back on the field, Jeff, you can start to utilize him more in that quick game, get the ball in his hands and let the speed really take over. I remember seeing a lot of Texas fans on social media, on the board, say, I didn't know Ryan Wingo was that quick. And, it's encouraging to see that speed is utilized in a way that can pick up some chunk yardage. So, yes, they've gotten to this point. Now let's see how they can continue to add to his arsenal moving forward.
Something Arch said in the press conference on Monday, I think applies to Wingo. It applies to a couple guys on offense. I think he's sharing this with Brandon Baker. I think Connor Robertson, Wingo's another one of those guys. Arch talks about the game slowing down a little bit. He said it's slowing down. And CJ, I think that's what you can see with Wingo. I think you're seeing a guy play. If it looks like he's playing more confident, I think it's because he's just more assertive. He's more sure of himself now. That's translating into confidence. It's translating into the big playability. Brandon Baker quietly has had a really good season. We know Connor Robertson's taken a step in the last couple of weeks. And, getting a guy like Emmett Mosley back, I think that was a really big part of this offense. Early on when the offense was struggling, everybody's like, why didn't you add a wide receiver out of the portal? Why didn't you go to the portal? Well, they did. It's just the guy they went and got out of the portal wasn't healthy. So, CJ, it's taken a lot longer than I think a lot of us would have liked, but it does seem like the pieces to this offense are getting in the right position at the right time, right when Texas really needs to be clicking on all cylinders.
Yeah, as well as the utilization of those pieces, right? We've seen Texas, use pre-snap motion at a rate higher than it's ever been over the last 2 weeks. 11 personnel higher than it's ever been over the last 2 games. And as a result, Texas put up some big-time points against Mississippi State, especially late in the game. And obviously against Vanderbilt, it was their best offensive performance of the year. So it's starting to come together. And again, with the final 3 games, you're going to need to score a lot of points to beat Georgia, Arkansas, and Texas A&M. No better time to find its rhythm than right now going over the final quarter of the schedule.
I don't know if that's going to translate into a lot of success against Georgia or a win. But you look at the process this offense is taking to get to where it is, CJ, and I think it just, for me, it's reinforced. Now, your offense the last 2 years was pretty freaking special. When you start looking at all the NFL pieces you had at all positions, it's probably, I would assume it's been one of the more challenging years Sark has had since he's been at Texas, just trying to make it all work. But honestly, CJ, I think for a lot of coaches, this is probably one of the most rewarding when you see it at its low points, but then you start to hit your stride. We'll just see. I think that is the big question. Is this offense, was the fourth quarter against Mississippi State and what we saw against Vanderbilt, is that a blip on the radar, or is this the start of that trend in the right direction we've all been wanting to see?
Man, it would be huge if that was the trend, right? If that was the acceleration for what could be with this offense, kind of what we all expected this offense to look like at the beginning of the year. And, I think it all starts up front, finding that starting five combination with Connor Robertson and Cole Hudson, where they are on the interior. To your point, Brandon Baker and Trevor Gooseby, they've been playing well on the outside. And Sark has said many a times, DJ Campbell's playing the best football of his Texas career currently. So look, if you can figure out that left guard spot and also have some continuity at the center position, well, now not only do you have two guys that have played the center spot before that can sit around and pick out, potential stunts and twists and blitzing options on the opposing defenses, but you got guys that can move and certainly fit well for what Texas likes to do with its outside zone as well.
And CJ, we'll stick with Wingo for a second. And as he starts to round into form, and again, hopefully we see him take off against Georgia and continue his hot streak of late. But I think about some of the best receivers we've seen at Texas. And, Jordan Shipley dealt with a slew of injuries early in his career. I think Mike Davis, who still statistically is one of the better receivers ever played Texas, did not have a good sophomore year. Devin Duvernay, who's still cashing checks in the NFL, did not have a good sophomore year. So Ryan Wingo is not the first guy we've seen, CJ, that ends up doing great things on the field, but early in his career, for whatever reason or another, ends up struggling. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm interested to see, hey, is he out of that now and trending in the right direction? And honestly, one of the biggest, it's not even a knock against him. It's just when you're in the same recruiting class nationally with guys like Jeremiah Smith and Cam Coleman and Ryan Williams, you're in an elite receiver class. Maybe you get held to a standard that's not exactly fair.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and I think another name that you could have mentioned there as well is Xavier Worthy, having dealt with some of that hand issues. Wingo, we'll see how he returns from the thumb, right? Thumbs are important to catch footballs, but it does sound like he is trending in the right direction to play without much limitation. We'll see, of course, but Jeff, it would be huge if he turned into that solidified number one undisputed for Arch Manning, not just for the duration and remainder of this year, but to go into 2026 as well with him and Emmett Mosley kind of taking the reins full time as the 1A, 1B pieces for this Texas offense. That would be fantastic if that was the case. And again, going into this year, the expectations are high. Now you're starting to see the production match some of those expectations, and it couldn't be coming at a better time.
As we shift over to the defense and talk about the secondary, I'll just encourage everybody, if you haven't done it already, get on the channel and check out Rod Baber's Sunday School piece where he gives you the complete breakdown of the secondary, what's been going on, some not so savory trends, looking at the personnel, the whole deal. Rod takes a really good view at what's going on in the secondary. But CJ, we'll get to this cut right here from Sark. He was asked about the secondary struggles of late, and he said clearly getting Michael Taft, Jelani McDonald, and even Xavier Filsaime back healthy, that could make a really big difference against Georgia.
Well, let's start with getting 16 back, getting 4 back, okay? Getting 17 back healthy. I mean, those 3 guys are factors for us. And Grayson Littleton, having, that as a true freshman playing the amount of snaps he's playing, I think him having a bye week to kind of get his body refreshed is big for him. But all those guys that I touch on affect what we do on the perimeter, because that's everybody playing on the same accord. That's everybody, working together. That's the communication and the communicating with confidence. And so I do think Manny, Jalen, and Cade Phillips growing up, I do think their play is affected by what we do inside. When you have to try to protect things inside, that puts guys a little bit more on islands on the perimeter. But I think if we can play as one as a unit, we're pretty good back there. And so getting 16 and 4 and 17, healthy, the emergence of Jonah, I think has been helpful for us as well. So very confident in that unit and looking forward to them play Saturday night.
CJ, I don't think it's a big secret that those guys are going to make this Texas secondary better, but where do you think it's going to help the most?
Yeah, look, this is a team with Georgia who their passing attack is much better than what Texas saw in the 2 games a year ago. So one is communication in the back end, obviously against tight ends. There's some numbers there that aren't too favorable, but also just tackling in space. Texas hasn't done that, particularly great over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And, we talk about that passing attack from Georgia. What they do very well is the quick game. Right, Gunnar Stockton throws about 30% of his attempts behind the line of scrimmage. They like to get the ball out quick and let their playmakers, Zachariah Branch, Noah Thomas, right, some of their running backs, play with the ball in their hands. And what Texas needs to be able to do is rally to the football, tackle in space, and all the while maintain that umbrella coverage on the back end so that they don't allow the big chunk yardage, which almost cost them a game against Vanderbilt.
Yeah, from a communication standpoint, you hit it on there a little bit. This version of the Georgia offense will stress you way more than the last 2 offenses had because they can hit you from a number of ways. You mentioned the quick game. A lot of that's going to be Zachariah Branch. They like to use their tight ends in the quick game. Obviously, the tight ends as receiving threats are big deals. And then the other piece you've got to worry about is Noah Thomas over the top when they go deep. And you pointed this out, CJ, on our Monday afternoon live stream after the press conference. Georgia actually has guys that can catch the ball now. Like that was maybe that receiver group's biggest problem is just inconsistency with the drops. That hasn't been the case for Georgia this year.
No, they've been much better this year. And look, there were some plays in Austin a year ago where Georgia probably gets 15 to 30 yards a couple times, and that ball hits the ground because of, last year the Georgia Bulldogs simply could not catch a cold. And this year, obviously, it's changed quite a bit. They've got some legitimate playmakers now at the wide receiver spot, at the tight end position as well. Oscar Delp, one of the top tight ends in the SEC. That's going to be a big challenge for Texas because you go back a little bit. Eli Stowers was able to put up some big yards. Mississippi State was able to hit Texas for a couple of big plays. Tight ends are going to be just as important as the big-time pass catchers. We'll see how that Texas secondary holds up.
And last thing, you mentioned this on Monday as well, and then the more I think about it, the more I kind of like your initial line of thinking on it. One guy, and we heard it in that cut, one guy Sark mentioned by name was Cade Phillips. Mm-hmm. And I think now getting McDonald and Taft back, obviously that helps, with communication and experience, all the things we talk about. But CJ, it makes me think Sark and Mark Orfe and PK, they might be more likely with the veterans in the middle of the field now. They might be more likely to throw a young guy like Cade Phillips out there knowing they've got a little bit more margin for error.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And, it was really interesting to hear Sark after the Vanderbilt game say, hey, we got 19 snaps out of Cade Phillips, and I kind of wanted to see more, right? And I think that's one of those young freshmen that coming into the season you had circled saying, yeah, this is a guy that Texas could certainly use and see big-time snaps out of. Well, if those big-time snaps come on the road against Georgia, well, that tells you all the faith that Texas has. I did want to mention real quick, Tuesday's practice has concluded. 2 green jerseys on the field. Xavier Filsaime still working back from what appeared to be a shoulder, maybe a stinger there. Michael Taft still in a green jersey, obviously with the hand. Jelani McDonald, however, was not, and that's big news coming off of the concussion. That gives you an indication of where he is in protocol and how he has been able to be ready to go for the Georgia Bulldogs this weekend. That safety spot should be looking much better.
A little bit of breaking news if you hung around for the end of the video. So good stuff, CJ. CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise. As always, thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to our friends over at Hargrove Roofing for sponsoring it. If you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you can get over to the site right now and sign up using the promo code OTFOG to save you some money. That'll get you an annual subscription, access for 1 full year for just $39.95. Make sure that you like this video and that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel. That way, whether it's here on the channel or on the site, you're not missing any of our coverage before, during, and after every Texas football game. For CJ, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, hook 'em.